Hey there, I'm Emmanuel, and welcome to If I Can, You Can, the channel where if I can do it, you can do it too. I go over real estate investing and home renovations. Today we'll be going over the NAR lawsuit and how it's going to affect the housing market going forward. Now, if you like this content, please like and subscribe below and leave me a comment. I always like to hear what y'all have to say. But for right now, let's get into it. Today we have James Pruitt with us from Atlanta Fine Homes, Sotheby's International Realty. We're going to be going into the NAR lawsuit. James, it's nice having you back. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself for people that haven't seen you before?
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Emmanuel. So again, James Pruitt, Atlanta Fine Homes, Sotheby's International Realty. This is coming into my 5th year of real estate, working on the residential side with both home buyers and on the investment side. So looking forward to our conversation about the lawsuit today.
Oh, that's awesome. Really appreciate having you here. Now, everyone's wondering, can you tell us, we've heard about it, we've seen it on the news, it's been a big deal. Can you just give us a little bit of background? What's going on? What's the lawsuit about? What's it entail? And how's it going to affect people going forward?
Absolutely. So, and it is a big deal. So what the lawsuit is a bunch of sellers came together and basically sued the National Association of Realtors, stating that the 6% commission, more importantly, the 3% that was offered to buyers agents was forced on them, that it was an antitrust lawsuit, that they were told that 6% standard, and that's what they have to pay or else no one will buy their house. Yeah, there's a lot of intricacies to it, but that's what it boils down to is sellers being mad that they felt like they were forced to have to pay the buyer's agent commission.
So how's that going to affect going forward how we're going to have to pay the real estate agent? Because I've heard crazy things where it's going to be a flat fee, or we're going to have to pay for the buying side. Because beforehand it was structured as, was it you pay 6% as the seller, but the buyer doesn't have to pay anything to the agent. So how's that going to look going forward?
Yeah, well, first, so there was no structure behind it. And so that's where the miscommunication came in. And I think it was a miscommunication between agents, doing their listing presentations. There's no structure. The fee's always been negotiable. Now a brokerage can set what their requirement for a fee is. They can say, you have to charge, as one brokerage they force their agents to charge X amount percentage for a listing. But the problem is you can't have brokerages coming together and saying, hey, let's all charge this. That's antitrust. It's saying like all the gas stations can't come together and say, hey, we're going to force everyone to pay a certain amount.
Yeah, everyone's going to say it's $10 a gallon now, and that's what's going to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah.
So whereas the brokerage as an individual can say what they are required to charge, and that's their fee. You just can't have everyone coming together and setting a standard. So there's no standard for the commission. But let's go into first the seller side of things and how that's affected. So the first thing that happened is on most of the MLSs, which is the multiple listing service where properties are advertised, NAR and anyone associated with that can't advertise a commission offered to the buyer's agent. They want to keep that out. They want the buyer's commission to be up to the seller. If they want to offer 0 or if they want to offer 3 or whatever they want to offer, it needs to be up to the seller to decide that. So when I sit and when I do my listing presentations, the way that I approach it now is I tell my seller, I'm like, look, the buyer's already come into the table with a lot of cash. They have their down payment, they have closing costs. There's a lot that they're already coming out of pocket. So it would be good to potentially offer some kind of help when it comes to the commission. But I also tell them, let's wait and see. Let's let the buyer's agent negotiate that within their offer. Rather than saying, hey, we're going to offer this to buyer's agents, let's let, when the buyer submits an offer, they say, seller to pay 3% to the buyer's agent. But it's built into the offer, right?
So it'll be something like the equivalent of cash at closing where they can get closing costs back to it if you
Yeah.
negotiate into it.
Basically, it's an extra closing cost. So if the buyer makes a low ball offer and they want 3% paid to their agent so they don't have to pay that, it's up to the seller to be like, listen, I'll take the offer, but I'm not going to pay your agent's commission. Or you can come up on the purchase price and then I'll pay your agent's commission. And at the end of the day, what I tell my sellers is, listen, this is all semantics. Like the focal point for you is what's your net dollar, right? What are you going to walk away with at the end of this transaction? That's the important part. It's not who's getting paid what fee or what money's going to who. It's when we walk away from this transaction, how much money is in your pocket. Yeah. And I think that's the way that it should be, right?
I think nobody knows that better than me. We did that with the house we're sitting in right now. It was $500,000 and ended up being, we offered $515,000 with $15,000 back at closing. What's the net on that? It's $500,000, exactly the same that they want. They didn't really care about all this other stuff that's going on. So I can see how that works out.
Yeah. So it's semantics. And I think, for a seller, it's like, look, have your bottom line of this is what I'm walking away with. This is what I need. And then that's your number. And then the rest, it's up to the buyer to make an offer that meets that number. Now for the buyer side, it's a little more of an in-depth conversation. So the buyer, when you sign a buyer brokerage in the state of Georgia, on that buyer brokerage, it has a commission fee layout. So, when I do my buyer consultation, I let the buyer know my fee for doing business with you is 3% of the purchase price. And then I break down the different scenarios for them. I say, hey, you can either pay that 3% to me out of your pocket when we close on the house. That's scenario one. Scenario two is we negotiate my 3% in the contract, just like I just mentioned. So we put in an offer and then we put in there seller to pay 3% commission to the buyer's agent. That way the buyer doesn't have to pay out of pocket. The third or the next scenario would be a lot of lenders, when new things pop up, everyone always shifts, everyone migrates. A lot of lenders now are able to actually work in the buyer's agent commission into their mortgage. Not everyone, but there are definitely lenders I've talked to that say, look, at the end of the day, if you need this house, but you don't have the extra cash to pay your agent, we can build that into the mortgage if the numbers make sense.
Now, how are you coming up to these nowadays with this transaction? Have you seen more of people trying, I know it's all semantics like we said earlier, but trying to put the 3% back on the agent? Because I know when I run my numbers and I try to buy it for a certain price, if I'm hit at the last minute, they're trying to pawn off the 3% buyer's agent fee back onto me. It just absolutely derails a lot of my numbers when I go in for making an offer and trying to make a purchase if they're trying to push that. Have you seen that much with what you've been doing?
No, because I'm not afraid to have the uncomfortable conversation at the beginning of walking you through those scenarios I just walked you through. So when we're about to make an offer, you already know the three scenarios. So yes, we can try to negotiate and get that paid for. But if the seller, doesn't like that offer, we might have to offer more, or you might have to come out of pocket to pay me. But this ahead of time of this is my fee. Let's figure out how we can get it covered. And it's just, that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess at the end of the day, what it comes up to is when you make an offer, and I know we talked a little bit beforehand about people getting emotional and trying to get into it. At the end of the day, as a buyer, you're making an offer. Somebody has an offer out there. And where you come in at that, either you can agree to what they're asking for, or if it's just not the right situation from you, you can walk away from it and look for another opportunity. So I guess it's something that we shouldn't really get hung up on too much, because unreasonable sellers are going to be unreasonable.
Exactly. If it's not commission, it's something else. It's closing costs. It's, they don't want to repair this. There's situations where you just walk away. But I will say, the silver lining is that on a lot of transactions that I'm doing, I am seeing the seller still willing to help pay that commission, whether it's the 3%, whether it's half of it. They want to get their house sold, right? And if you come to the table with an offer, with a good offer, a lot of times they're going to take it. It's tripping on pennies getting to dollars. Are they really going to blow a potential really good offer up over 3%.
Yeah, especially looking at the median home prices nowadays, was it about 400,000 throughout the United States?
Yeah, I know in Atlanta it's actually upwards closer to 500,000, but yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, $500,000 for 1% of that transaction. That is, or even if you talk about half of it, you're talking about roughly $7,500 to $8,000. You're going to blow up a $500,000 deal. Yeah, this doesn't help anybody. And like we are saying earlier, emotional sellers or emotional buyers that get into this, you're not going to talk reason into someone who's emotional. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And again, at the end of the day, like we've talked about in previous podcasts, is I think a big issue is agents not providing value, right? The fact that this whole perception of buyer's agents are just door openers, I think that whole perception is what kind of started all of this, because sellers are like, why am I paying 3% to someone that's just opening a door? And all that is a lack of an agent's ability to show their value in a transaction, to come to the table and say, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm helping this deal. It's not just me opening a door. There's so much going on behind closed doors, and that has to be expressed. You have to show value, or else people are going to get, frustrated, because no one wants to pay someone for nothing, right?
Oh yeah, there's somebody with a for sale by owner sign up the street. I've called that number 5 times. I can't get the guy to pick up the phone, and I want to put an offer on the house, but it doesn't happen. And they don't see that. They're like, oh, back in the day, I just throw the sign out there. Well, you got to follow up on that.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's a lot of things that people don't see, that there's a lot of movement happening, preparing contracts. If you had to turn it around to me and tomorrow I had to prepare my own contract for a real estate deal, I am going to whiff that bad.
Absolutely. And these, even if you had access to the Georgia Association of Realtor contracts, which are built by attorneys, these contracts are changed sometimes 3 or 4 times in a single year. The verbiage is changing. All the things that you fill out are changing. So these are things that we're constantly being educated on, and we attend classes and, making sure that we know exactly what this contract says. I mean, I've read the contract front to back multiple times, because I want to make sure that I know everything that's in there, because you're signing it, I'm signing it. There's a lot of money on the line, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't know what we were getting into and every little point of that contract.
Gotcha. Now, I've heard a little bit about flat fees coming into play. Have you heard anything about that?
You see it some, but I don't think, again, you get what you pay for, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's always been different listing services. You can always pay a transaction brokerage, which basically you get the photos done yourself. You basically do everything yourself. They just list it for you when it's time to accept an offer. They'll help you through that part, but basically they're just sitting in the back. You're accepting all the showings. You're making all the decisions yourself. So you're not really getting any backing. You're just paying someone to list it on the MLS for you, and then, get the paperwork done. So those always have been around, and they always will be for people that want to take that route. But, if you want full service and you want someone there by your side making sure you're protected, you need an agent, and a flat fee is not going to cut it,
Yeah, I get you. And I've heard of people before saying that kind of go with that flat fee service. And I think I read a statistic somewhere that you can do that and you'll save X percentage, but you may get $30,000 less because you're not doing the correct comps, or you may not be driving it like you could to get the most value out of the house when you're selling it. So yes, you save this, but you ended up losing out on this. So it can kind of equal out if you're not, well versed in selling a house.
Yeah.
And how often do you sell a house? You sell your house once every 7 to 10 years, something like that. You don't have the repetitions in there to really do it well. And the money that you're saving on a percentage may not make up for the money you're leaving on a table that you didn't get fully out of it. Or you may hold it for so long that you're end up paying it in holding costs in the long run. And then that comes with a whole bunch of different issues, because if you don't sell it for 6 months, even if it's a smoking deal, people look at it sideways because it just, something must be wrong with it, and that just lingers in the back of your mind there somewhere.
Absolutely. And it's statistically proven that for sale by owner homes generate, I think it's 20 or 30%, maybe not that high, but the significant less sale price than homes listed by a professional realtor. So it's like, you're not willing to pay the 3% to the listing agent because you're still probably going to have to pay, or the buyer's still probably going to ask for their agent commission. So you're paying the 3, so you're literally losing 20, 30% because you didn't want to pay 3%. So the math doesn't add up, but
No.
some people just want to do it themselves. And then even outside of the paying the commission, you have to think about the potential lawsuit. There's so many deals that go wrong where seller defaults, the seller didn't disclose properly. There's so many different steps, and now the seller's being sued. There's this whole legal battle. You're paying lawyer fees. It goes way beyond just opening doors and marketing. There's so many intricacies, and that's what you're paying for.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I have a mechanical background. If I had to do something deep internal into the transmission, I'm not going to go and try to do it myself. Just save $100. Pay the experts to do what they do day in and day out, because it's going to take you way more time. You may mess up something, and it could cost you a whole lot more at the end of the day. Now, I'm all for people doing it themselves. I'm a lot of a DIYer myself, but there's just some things, and I say about this, if it's very technical and just like that can cost you a ton of money that you leave on the table or you miss out on, just leave it to the experts. They do it a lot more repetitious than you do.
Absolutely. Save your time, save your peace of mind, and pay someone to do it unless you really feel like you can do it yourself, in which case, go for it. But we're here to help.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely, Manuel. Thank you.
So appreciate having James on the show today. Now, if you have anything else, please leave me a comment down below. But for right now, that's all I have. I'll see you in the next one.